The mountains stood still beneath a moonless sky, their jagged ridges cutting into the black horizon like ancient scars. The air was sharp enough to bite, and every exhale of the SEAL team turned into a ghostly plume of steam that vanished almost as fast as it appeared. SEAL Team Echo moved silently in a tight diamond formation, each man's eyes sweeping the frozen expanse through night vision goggles that painted the world in shades of green. Their mission was clear and simple, on paper at least. Move across the high-altitude valley, locate a captured CA operative, and extract him before dawn. They'd done worse in worse places, but everyone knew something about this mission felt off. The intel had been vague, the timing rushed, and the silence on the enemy radio frequencies was too perfect. Lieutenant Briggs, the team leader, had been in the field long enough to know when things didn't smell right. And tonight it stank of a trap. 2 clicks to target. Briggs murmured into his throat mic. His voice was calm, steady, commanding the kind of confidence his men needed to hear. "Copy that," replied Dawson, the team's breacher, his voice low. Thermals still clear. Snow crunched faintly under their boots as they climbed over a rocky ridge. Wind sliced through the gaps in their gear, howling like some living thing. Up ahead, a flicker of movement caught Briggs's eye. He froze, raised his fist, and the entire unit stopped instantly. Silence, only the wind, only the sound of their own hearts. Then, from somewhere up on the ridge, a faint glint, a reflection of metal. A scope. Briggs barely had time to open his mouth before the mountain exploded. The first RPG hit 50 yards to their left, erupting in a flash of orange and smoke that turned the night into chaos. Shrapnel tore through the snow, showering the team with burning fragments. The shockwave sent Calder, the youngest member, sprawling face, first into the ice. The second rocket followed half a second later, slamming into a nearby rock face and filling the air with dust and fire. "Contact, East Ridge," Briggs roared, rolling behind cover. Gunfire erupted from above, automatic, coordinated, relentless. Red tracer rounds ripped through the darkness, slicing past their heads like angry fireflies. Dawson returned fire, his rifle barking in short, controlled bursts. "We're pinned, LT. Find cover and return fire." Briggs barked, sliding behind a fallen boulder. He yanked out his comms device. "Overwatch, this is Echo, requesting support. We are under heavy static." Nothing, the signal was jammed. "Comms are dead," Calder shouted, fumbling to reload. "Then we fight." Briggs yelled back, "Keep your spacing." They were trapped in a narrow ravine, hemmed in by cliffs that turned into death funnels once the enemy had the high ground. Muzzle flashes blinked in the darkness above like a string of angry stars. Briggs took aim at one, squeezed the trigger, and saw the flash vanish. One down, too many left. Calder crawled over, his face pale beneath the dirt and frost. "Sir, there's too many of them. They've got angles on both sides. We're not saying it." Briggs cut him off sharply. "What? That word, not here, not tonight." The kid hesitated, his breath trembling in the cold. Then he muttered, almost to himself, "We're cked." The word hung in the freezing air, heavy and raw. Briggs didn't scold him this time. He just glanced around at the men crouched behind rocks, low on ammo, backs against stone. He knew Calder wasn't wrong. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and cut off from command. But SEALs didn't surrender. Not to fear, not to odds. "Listen up." Briggs shouted over the storm of bullets. "We hold this position until we get air eyes back. No one breaks. No one runs." They adjusted, shifting fire positions, moving in pairs. Textbook discipline in the middle of chaos. Sparks flew from the rocks as rounds slammed inches from their heads. The cold made everything harder. Fingers stiffened, rifle bolts jammed, breath burned in their lungs. Dawson lobbed a smoke grenade downslope, creating a billowing wall of white cover. Through it, Briggs saw faint silhouettes closing in, enemy fighters advancing through the mist. He steadied his rifle, lined up the first figure, and fired. The body dropped, then another, but for every one that fell, 2 more appeared. Minutes dragged like hours. The world was reduced to muzzle flashes and the sting of cordite in the air. Somewhere in the distance, another explosion shook the mountain. The radio hissed faintly again, static rising like a whisper, but still no help. Briggs ducked as a bullet grazed his shoulder, the shock numbing him for a moment. He pressed a gloved hand to the wound, then grinned through gritted teeth. "You'll have to do better than that," he muttered toward the ridge. The fight was getting desperate now. Ammunition was running low, and the cold was setting into their bones. Briggs knew they couldn't hold much longer. But as he scanned the horizon, he caught sight of something. Just a flicker on the opposite ridge, a glint of glass, a scope, a sniper. Only this time it wasn't one of the enemy. Somewhere out there in the snow, he hoped, prayed, that Viper was still alive. Because if she was, they still had a chance. 2 kilometers north of the ambush site, a cold wind howled over the mountain ridge like a warning from the gods. Snow drifted sideways in thick curtains, carried by gusts sharp enough to sting through layered gear. In that frozen silence lay a sniper, call sign Viper, motionless as stone. Her rifle rested perfectly aligned on its bipod, barrel coated with frost, scope glinting faintly in the dim light of a dying moon. For hours she had been scanning the valley, eyes flicking between the scope and her spotter's tablet. Her overwatch position had given her a perfect angle on SEAL Team Echo's route, until the radio went dead 10 minutes earlier. Since then, all she'd heard was static, and the faint rumble of explosions carried by the wind. "Echo, this is Viper," confirmed Citrip. "You're taking fire." She whispered into her mic. Nothing but static. She tried again. "Echo, do you copy?" The only answer was the low hiss of the blizzard building around her. She cursed under her breath and adjusted her scope, focusing on the valley below. Faint flashes of light punctured the darkness, muzzle flashes. Too many. The ridgeline above the SEALs was alive with enemy fire. They were pinned. Her pulse slowed, not from calm, but from pure control. Viper didn't panic. Not anymore. She'd seen enough of war to know that panic killed faster than bullets. She rolled her shoulder to ease a cramp, then checked her rifle's zeroing. 500 meters. Wind speed, 22 knots, gusting. Distance and angle readouts flickered on the digital display mounted beside the scope. She adjusted the elevation turret by instinct. 3 clicks up, 1 left for wind drift. Her gloves were thick, but her movements were precise. She'd made shots like this before, shots that changed battles. But this one felt heavier. She could almost feel Echo's desperation bleeding through the silence. Her spotter, Ramirez, should have been beside her, feeding her ranges and coordinates. But he was gone, hit by shrapnel in an earlier recon skirmish. She was alone now, alone and surrounded by cold, endless white. Through the scope, the world narrowed to a small circle of clarity amid chaos. The crosshairs swept across the slope where the firefight raged. She could make out dark figures darting between rocks, flashes of muzzle fire, and, there, movement from the north ridge, reinforcements, a convoy of armed hostiles moving quickly, flanking Echo Team's position. If they reached that ridge, the SEALs were done. No cover, no retreat. It would be a massacre. Viper exhaled slowly, long and controlled, the kind of breath that came before something final. All right. She whispered to no one. "Let's dance." Her finger tightened on the trigger. The rifle roared once, echoing across the valley like thunder rolling through ice. The recoil was familiar, solid grounding. Through her scope, she saw the lead insurgent collapse mid-step. She didn't wait to watch him fall. She was already shifting, already recalculating. She chambered another round and fired again. A second target dropped, then a third. Down below, the ambush line faltered. The enemy fighters hesitated, confused by the unseen hand cutting them down from a mile away. Their radio chatter flared, frantic and broken, as they scrambled for cover. Viper's breathing stayed measured, her mind a cold machine of calculations and corrections. She tracked a squad leader trying to flank left wind shift. 2 clicks right, 480 meters. She squeezed. The man folded instantly. Every shot bought Echo Team seconds. Seconds to breathe, to move, to live. Through her earpiece, faint voices broke through the static for the first time. "Viper, is that you?" Briggs's voice, rough but alive. She smiled faintly. "Copy, Echo. You boys look like hell." "Yeah," he panted, "and you look like our ticket home." The wind screamed louder, rattling her scope. Snow crusted on her gloves and cheek, but she didn't move. She fired again and again. Her rifle's suppressor glowed faintly red from heat. steam rising in the cold. Her ammo count was dropping fast. 15 rounds left. Below, she could see the SEALs beginning to reposition, regrouping behind her cover fire. Briggs was shouting commands, Dawson moving to flank. The tide was shifting. Then her scope caught movement, a flash of orange. An enemy RPG operator setting up behind a rock formation, directly above the SEAL's extraction route. Her heart kicked once hard. She shifted aim, recalculated distance, waited for the wind to steady. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. Time slowed to a crawl. The target knelt, raising the launcher. Viper exhaled. The shot cracked through the night, slicing through distance and storm. The explosion that followed was small, controlled, but enough to send the rest of the ambushers scattering in panic. She could hear Briggs's voice again, breathless but steady. That's her. That's Viper. Viper blinked snowflakes off her lashes and chambered another round. Her scope found new targets. Stay alive, Echo, she whispered. I'm not done yet. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the cold and the discipline, a spark of pride burned quietly. She wasn't just their overwatch. She was their shield, and tonight, she intended to make damn sure none of them died on her watch. The mountain storm had turned savage by the time Viper's last bullet found its mark. Snow came down in thick, blinding sheets, and the once clear valley below had become a white blur of chaos. Her rifle barrel smoked faintly in the cold, each breath she took vanishing instantly into the storm. The air was filled with echoes, distant gunfire, the crack of rockfall, the low thunder of a coming blizzard. She was down to 2 rounds. Her comms hissed with static, but through the interference she could just make out Briggs's voice. Viper were pushing west toward the pass. Extractions inbound, but were taking fire. Copy, she replied, voice calm despite the pounding of her heart. Keep moving, I'll cover. She scanned through her scope. Nothing but white. Then, faint movement, a group of hostiles breaking from cover, advancing on Echo's flank. Her glove brushed snow off her cheek as she steadied the rifle, feeling the cold metal bite into her shoulder. She adjusted for crosswind and squeezed. 1 shot, the lead man fell. 2nd shot, another went down. Click, empty. Her magazine was done. She reached into her vest, found the last one, half full, and slammed it home. The ritual steadied her. For snipers, rhythm meant survival. Through the static, Briggs came again, louder now. We're almost to the ridge, but they're closing in fast. Viper didn't respond. Words wouldn't help now. Action would. She rolled onto her side, slung the rifle across her back, and began crawling down the slope. The snow was waist deep, and each movement burned her muscles. The storm clawed at her, stealing body heat with every breath. But she didn't stop. She moved like a shadow using the terrain, rocks, drifts, fallen trees, to stay invisible. Her eyes never left the faint glow of muzzle flashes below. When she finally reached a lower ridge, the sound of the fight was deafening. Echo Team was dug in behind a fallen boulder, gunfire hammering around them. Sparks flared as rounds slammed into the rock. Briggs shouted orders, voice hoarse but steady. Dawson fired bursts between reloads, keeping the enemy pinned. Calder was bleeding from his shoulder, but still fighting. They were corner. Again. Viper dropped behind a snowbank and unslung her rifle. From here, the enemy was close, less than 600 meters. She didn't even need the scope. 1 breath, 1 heartbeat, 1 shot. She took down 2 advancing fighters before they realized death was staring at them from the ridge. The rest hesitated, then broke formation. Too late. Echo seized the moment, unleashing their counterfire. Push now, Briggs yelled, signaling the team forward. Vipers got our 6. They moved fast, cutting through the thinning line of hostiles. The snow kicked up around them, bullets slicing through the air. Briggs tossed a grenade, clearing a path ahead. The explosion rolled like thunder. Then came a new sound, a distant roar, deep and rhythmic. Rotor blades, bird inbound. Calder shouted, voice nearly lost to the storm. Through the blinding white, Viper saw it. An MH-60 helicopter breaking through the clouds, spotlight cutting a cone through the snowstorm. Its side door gunner opened up, strafing the ridge with suppressive fire. The cavalry had arrived, but the landing zone was still hot. Viper stayed behind, scanning for threats. Then she saw it. A last squad of insurgents regrouping behind a cluster of rocks, one of them lifting a shoulder-mounted RPG. Her gut clenched. If that rocket fired, the helo and everyone on it were finished. She adjusted her position, heart steady. The snow and wind clawed at her, but her mind was pure silence. The world slowed to a pulse. She could almost feel the heartbeat of the mountain under her elbows. "Come on," she whispered. "Show me your face." The RPG operator rose to aim. She squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the storm like lightning. A heartbeat later, the entire ridge erupted in flame. The explosion blew the man backward, sending his weapon spinning into the abyss. Direct hit. Briggs shouted, "Go, go, go." The team sprinted for the extraction point, boots pounding through snow. Viper slung her rifle and ran after them, lungs burning, vision blurring with exhaustion. The helicopter's downwash hit her like a wall of wind and ice as she neared the landing zone. Briggs grabbed her arm and hauled her inside just as the bird lifted off. Rounds pinged off the fuselage, sparks flying into the dark. Calder collapsed against the cabin wall, laughing weakly. "We made it." Viper didn't answer. She sat against the bulkhead, chest heaving, hands still trembling from adrenaline. Outside, the white world faded beneath them, replaced by clouds and darkness. Briggs moved over, helmet off, eyes meeting hers. "You saved our asses back there," he said quietly. She gave a tired half-smile. "Just doing my job," he chuckled, shaking his head. "Remind me never to doubt your aim again." Viper looked out through the open door, watching the mountains vanish into the storm below. Snow whipped through the cabin, cold and clean. She keyed her radio one last time, voice soft but steady. "Told you, Lieutenant," she said. "We're never cked while I'm watching." And as the helicopter carried them home through the raging night, the words hung in the air, part joke, part truth, and a promise she'd made long ago to every man she ever covered. She would always be the unseen guardian in the storm.